I just wanted to mention, I think you're going to hear tomorrow about the Science and Entertainment Exchange. It's a wonderful organization that has started up and done things, in my view, the right way, which is embedded itself in Hollywood, made available science expertise, and seen in accordance with our approach, understood that you don't want to change the film industry in order to get films about. You need to help them do the thing they're doing, but do it better, and connect them up more with scientists and engineers. Oceans is a film actually did very well in Germany. It's a documentary about the oceans. We were involved. This is another kind of project. We were involved with Jacques Perrin, the filmmaker who made Winged Migration. We worked with him for several years. Put significant funds into this film. It's originally was a fiction film. It turned into a documentary. I think it's the third highest grossing documentary ever, and it's still opening in several countries around the world. And we hooked him up with a lot of our Census of Marine Life researchers. Women in Science, I wanted to just pull out an example of, this is just 5 films that we're involved with that have women in science. One is Hedy Lamarr, where the Sloan Foundation is actually so interested in this that we made a program-related investment. Right now, there's a director, Uli Adel. Rachel Weisz is attached to star. The story, do you know about frequency hopping and Hedy Lamarr? Is that a story here that's known? That, Hedy Lamarr was famous for the first woman to appear naked in a mainstream film. It made her an overnight sensation. She then married an Austrian arms merchant who was extremely jealous of her, so he bought all copies of the film and burned them up, and he wouldn't let her out of his sight. He turned out to be Hitler's arms merchant, so Hedy Lamarr got to sit in on all these meetings with the big arms manufacturers. They thought she was just the dumb trophy wife. She, in fact, was an incredibly brilliant woman. She absorbed everything that she learned. She then escaped to America, drugged the maid, took her clothes, climbed down the window, went to Hollywood, became a star, but she was obsessed with helping defeat Hitler, and she came up with an idea for a guidance system that would tell a torpedo that would keep altering the signal the torpedo got, so that you couldn't knock it out of the water. It could hit the submarines. She patented it. She went to the Pentagon. They presented the idea. The Pentagon didn't take her seriously. The patent was hidden until 1954 when it expired. It was then used. It's now the basis of your cell phone, Wi-Fi, and smart bombs, all coming out of Hedy Lamarr. Talk about science and sex. It's a great story. Rosalind Franklin and DNA, we have 2 projects, Photograph 51 and The Broken Code. We'll see which one of them gets past the finish line. You often have to support more than one effort because you don't know who's going to get there. Lisa Meitner in nuclear fission. It's a story of Volker Schlondorf is interested in directing. We're going to do it as a theatrical film, then we'll go to Nova as a television show. Marie Curie, Radium, Radioactivity, that based on Barbara Goldsmith's book. Helen Mirren was interested in playing that. We were developing with Masterpiece Theater. Now HBO's come along. They're going to do it. Again, we love people come and steal from us because then we don't even have to pay for it and it gets made anyway. So that's the second time HBO has come. We were doing another film with Masterpiece Theater about Einstein and Eddington. I got them $1 million grant. HBO came along and paid $3 million. We saved our $1 million. The film gets made, hopefully, as well as Masterpiece would have made it. Future Weather is an independent film. It's shooting right now. 3 generations of women, and about climate change, climate science, and about how a young girl whose life is messed up finds in science something that she can hold on to. Again, just examples of things that are in the works now about women in science, some examples of men in science. These are various biopics that we're involved in that have some people in Hollywood and elsewhere interested in them. And here I'm just giving more examples of things that are coming up, projects in the pipeline. Terrence Malick, Voyage of Time, purports to be a history of the universe from the beginning to the end of the universe. In 45 minutes, Brad Pitt is going to narrate it. We'll see how that comes out. It'll be an IMAX film and will open in theaters. And so I'm not sure of my time. Let me just conclude with a couple of points that occurred to me as I was listening to everybody here. Embrace STEM offers great untapped opportunities. I mean, I don't think you should. I think someone made a comment here, I think from the BBC yesterday, about how many stories there are out there right now. If you just look around, there are a gazillion stories. Don't think of STEM as something limiting or narrow. I think you need to think of it more broadly. The stories are everywhere. empower, stimulate, and facilitate, don't legislate. I think one has to be very careful working with the artistic community about telling them, no one can create with a hand around their throat. I think what you can do is you can give them the means, you can point them in certain directions. The worst thing we ever do is, if we don't like the way something's come out, we don't ask for our money back, we just take our name off of it. That's the only thing we'll do. But once you need to, you need to place smart bets, give people the opportunity, and then let them go. I don't think you can try to I don't think you should confuse propaganda with art. Synergize, take a holistic multimedia approach to culture. Again, I think very important not to think of TV, film in isolation, and entertain, lighten up. Not that this is a very, very serious issue, but the way to approach it is not to be killjoys, it's actually to understand. I place entertainment give it a very, very high value. I think it's an enormous tool, and the show must go on. I think that's what if you're dealing with the entertainment industry, let them do what they're best at doing. And I think you will be happy with the results. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doron. Really an impressive list of successes. But tell us, you've been referring to yourself as a translator, like between two worlds. Could you describe a little bit the actual atmosphere in those meetings, in those colloquiums, when those two worlds meet for the first time?
It's usually very positive because people are very interested in them, and if there's nothing like celebrity meeting celebrity. So, movie people, if you get a, Dustin Hoffman, a Robert De Niro, Tom Hanks, and then you have some Nobel laureates, each of them is, wowed by the others' achievements, and they're interested because they're, first of all, everyone lives in one culture. So I think scientists are often, we found, much more open. By the way, male scientists more than female. This is one of the problems. It's much harder for me to get prominent women scientists to come on these panels. The men are all ready.
Why is that?
Because I think it's tougher for women, and there's always this question of, will I be taken seriously? And there's this issue, there's the Carl Sagan problem. I mean, even in America, where if you become too famous, too well known as a scientist, your scientific credentials sometimes become suspect, which is why it's much easier to get a Nobel laureate. But at that point, they're bulletproof, right? No one is going to take the Nobel away. They've achieved prominence, and so they're happy to do that. I think for women, it's tougher because, frankly, they've had to overcome more obstacles, so they tend to be a little more sensitive about being taken seriously. But the public loves, and the film students, when one of the events that we did with Tribeca, we had one of our more successful summits, and we surveyed the students, the film students, and we asked them, what was the highlight of the entire event for them, and there were a lot of movie stars and directors and screenwriters there, and almost to a person, all the film students said meeting James Watson for them was the highlight, rather than meeting Robert De Niro or the other film stars. So there's mutual interest and curiosity. Sometimes there's hostility, as there was in that early meeting with Milch, who was being intentionally provocative. I think even that is fine. I think there is, sometimes the public is suspicious, sometimes even rightly so, often not rightly so, about what scientists are up to. And our job is to try to, not to justify or defend, to actually just try to translate, to make clearer what it is that's really going on, so people can feel more comfortable and more conversant with the scientific enterprise. So if you think about it, in America, let's say 98% of the public will never go into science or engineering. We're interested in reaching that 98% and making them feel more comfortable with what that other 2% is doing, and so that they don't speak different languages all the time. That's what I meant.
But what about the scientists themselves? Would you say that Anglo-American scientists per se are more interested in spreading their word by means of media and entertainment than, for example, like German scientists or so?
Well, since I don't know that many German scientists, except people like Günter Blobel, who work in the U.S., won the Nobel at Rockefeller, who I knew. But I think generally, based on what I'm hearing here, I think there's a little bit of a lag. So in America, in the last 20 years, there's been a big change where, again, what I call the Carl Sagan effect, where he was really basically blacklisted from becoming a member of the National Academy of Sciences, even though his science was good enough to get him in because of his immense popularity with shows like Cosmos. I think now it's considered a little more acceptable for scientists. They understand the importance of speaking to the public. But I think there's still ambivalence even in America. So someone like Brian Greene, who's a string theorist who wrote a very popular book called The Elegant Universe, who's become a little bit of a celebrity, there's ambivalent. I think there's still ambivalence in the scientific community, but there is recognition in America that if you lose the public, you're not going to have any support, you're not going to have any funding. And so it's important to make efforts. And I think groups like the NAS and the NSF have understood now at the highest level how important it is to keep the public, to take the public with you.
Are there questions from the floor for Doron? Yes.
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that your concept of cultural matrix is wonderful. And I warn you, I'm going to steal it from now on.
All yours.
But what do you think if we say dynamic axiological matrix?
Dynamic what?
Axiological. Ethics and morals together.
Sure.
Because it could explain a lot of phenomena that really are not explained yet. I mean, Goebbels, or the human sacrifice in Mexico, or the war between Jews and Palestine. And I think this dynamic axiological matrix, it is a big universe that you open today, really.
It's interesting you say that because I'm not related to this conference, but I'm starting a new program at Sloan called Science Diplomacy, dealing with things like Israel, Palestine, India, Pakistan, using science as a network. And so and in some sense, it's an extension of the kind of work I've done. I've always seen myself as moving between people who have different views of the world. And so I'm with you in terms of where I think we're thinking along the similar lines in terms of what the basic enterprise, it's fundamental. It has to do with who people are and how they view the world and what their suspicions and prejudices are. And I think that's the intersection of science and humanities and of these different cultures. It comes down to the same thing in my view.